Welcome back, Tribe. So essentially, we have a string of videos here detailing the decline in marriage, not just in China, but around the world. In conservative parts of America, population is collapsing. Let's get into it.
China's once thriving wedding industry is now grappling with a double whammy. Not only has the COVID-19 pandemic thrown a curveball at the elaborate and expensive wedding traditions in the country, but a plunging number of couples willing to tie the knot is posing an even greater threat. The trend is raising alarms for officials aiming to boost both marriage and birth rates. Now take a look at this next report for more.
With the number of Chinese couples getting married in decline, scenes like this are becoming a rare sight. Less matrimony is a worrying trend for wedding planners in China, an industry estimated at almost $500 billion just 3 years ago. Yuan Jialiang ran a full-scale wedding planning business for almost a decade in Shanghai, before switching to wedding photography as demand for his services began to fall, and he hasn't looked back.
In the process of switching from wedding planning to wedding photography, I started to realize that actually couples' demands for photography and videography will not change. No matter how the format of the wedding changes, no matter how the scales of the wedding changes, they still have the demand to record this precious time. So I found that I've made the right career change.
China's wedding industry already hit a rough patch during the pandemic, when many couples delayed their ceremonies. There were 6.8 million marriages across China last year, which is 800,000 fewer than in 2021, and the lowest since the government began publishing the data in 1986. Now, a bigger threat looms in couples less willing to spring for an all-out wedding. Ceremonies in China are traditionally elaborate, expensive affairs, but wedding planners report that couples who do go for it are spending less. This drop in marriage registrations will likely exacerbate the decline in births in China. Already
the problem, we already seen the temper tantrums that they're throwing in China, those spoiled women in Beijing and all that stuff. The issue is economic, first and foremost. It's just too expensive to get married. It's too expensive for the elaborate wedding. It's too expensive to start a family. We're feeling the crunch economically worldwide. This isn't just a Western problem. It's a Far East problem as well. We're seeing this across all developed nations. The way we've structured society, profits over people, profits over family, is the reason why we're headed for population collapse. This has far more to do than just Western nations, although we rag on them for different reasons, like ideologies about what a man and what a woman is. The Far East has none of those problems, yet they're still headed for population collapse. What is the issue here for Japan, South Korea, China, all that stuff? Massive multinational conglomerates that control and have influence over the government. CCP is a little bit different, but I'm mostly talking about South Korea, for example, and Japan, that have so much influence, putting pressure on the government to pad their bottom line at the expense of society as a whole. When corporations grow big and strong, families and people become smaller and weaker. It's a balancing act. The less power you have as a corporation, the less control and influence over government, the more typically you'll see the family structure being strong, the nuclear and extended family thriving, community and society as a whole being healthy. Because the entity of the business, the entity of the family are both fighting for control with the government. Now, unfortunately, the society that we built were ruled by corporations. This is what it is.
One of the fastest aging societies in the world. Many cities deny unmarried mothers child raising or help.
Yeah, and on the individual level, because we've become so materialistic and hedonistic, women want it all. They're no longer traditional. They no longer want to compromise and meet you in the middle for any single issue that you could possibly have in your relationship, your marriage, whatever. And so they become unmarriageable. There's a bunch of women here, over 50% easy, man. Most men will tell you like 90% of women are unmarriageable today. That's the issue. And the women have their own issues with men, but it's the man who gets on their knees and has to propose and take a woman for his wife. So the customer is no longer interested in marriage. Now, the seller, aka women, are failing to completely provide any value on the sale of that concept of marriage to men today. That sentence alone would rile up feminists, and they'll tell you, like, who needs marriage anyway? Who even needs men? We don't need anything anymore. It's not the 1950s, blah, 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 blah. But they're talking from a selfish point of view because not all women are like them. Most women want to be taken care of. Most women want babies. Most women want a man. It's that simple.
Healthcare subsidies and having children out of wedlock is often frowned upon. As the economy weakens and consumer confidence wanes, those in the industry are finding little cause for optimism.
The whole environment has contributed to the fact that the wedding industry is not very prosperous now. I was probably hopeful for another big industry climax, but now I'm more worried than optimistic about the prospects.
With high jobless rates and low household spending among the young and the middle class, Jewel Wong, who owns several stores in China selling designer wedding dresses, is staking the future of her company on wealthier clients that have weathered the economic downturn.
I told you guys, marriage is going to be a luxury of the rich. By the end of the century, only rich people are getting married. All the poor just get to look at the elaborate weddings and people having rings on their fingers and together in the traditional household. It's going to become a luxury to have a nuclear family. The rest of the poor will be having kids out of wedlock, broken single parent homes, splitting the kids up. One parent gets the kid for these many days a week. The other parent gets the kid for those other days. Raising a kid in that unstable household because people are too selfish, too materialistic, too hedonistic to want to live together because it's too much work and I'd rather have my freedom. But I do want a kid, but I don't want to put any labels on it. So it's going to be these weird situation baby ships, sugar daddy, sugar baby relationships, and only the uber rich, not even uber rich, the well-off are going to be the only ones that have traditional family values anymore. That's how mind-blowing this shit is.
COVID caused such a big impact on everybody's lives. As a market, we see an absolute downturn in spending. So all alongside our strategy have been niche. We don't want to flow with the broader market because we don't think that's in a good place to go.
And here we go, America Next.
Your Valentine's Day plans are set, but a new report says fewer people across the country and right here in Alabama are planning a trip to the altar. The website QuoteTree analyzed census data from 2011 to 2020 and found marriages in Alabama fell 12% over that time period, while divorces dropped 4%. They say Alabama has had one of the biggest declines in marriages, but the third smallest decline in divorces.
Alabama, one of the poorest states. Do you see? Keep your eye on this money thing. Okay, one of the poorest states has one of the largest declines in marriages.
We're seeing a decline.
And perpetuating the cycle of broken homes with horrendous outcomes for the children. Trapping your seed and less than ideal outcomes. How would you want to control society if you're at the tippy top in ivory towers behind golden gates? How do you keep the plebs distracted, destroyed, and divided to the point where their seeds can't even ascend into your ranks and compete with your children? I wonder.
And the importance of getting married. But the people who are getting married, they are getting married because that's what they want to do, not because that's what society says that they should do. So we are seeing a drop in marriages, but we're also seeing a drop in divorces because the people who are getting married really want to be married.
That's Nick Van Zandt. He says their analysis also shows men are more likely to be married the more their income goes up, while women are more likely to be married at any earning level. However, women who earn $75,000 to $100,000 are most likely to be divorced.
You hear that? You hear that? Red pill tenants should be going off in your head right now. Let's keep it pushing.
Valentine's Day was also wedding day for couples here in Middle Tennessee. Just as Adam Minster reports, marriage isn't what it used to be in Tennessee, but neither is divorce.
Still there.
You get it?
It's hard to come up with a more grand gesture of love than getting married on Valentine's Day.
We were just ready. We wanted to get everything rolling.
While planning their wedding for next year, Luis Meneses got a call from his former employer. His old boss, Judge Allegra Walker, was doing courthouse weddings on Valentine's Day and had an extra spot.
It was a God-given opportunity.
And he says he wouldn't change a thing.
And I think if you can find one thing that's certain, it's love.
But the newlyweds didn't take a leap of faith. After dating for 5 years and living together, they had talks about what marriage would mean to them.
Thinking in the next couple of years, we want to travel, have kids, all of that. And we just want to feel like we're official as a couple to be able to do that and just kind of bound it by God and all that.
And right here on Broadway has become a go-to destination for people getting ready for their big day. But here in the state of Tennessee, marriage rates are down.
According to state data, there's been a more than 15% decrease in marriage from 2011 to 2021. Divorce rates are also down. There were 23% fewer divorces in 2021 than there were in 2011. family law attorney believes these decreases aren't because people are less in love. They're just planning more. She says more couples are exploring prenuptial agreements.
That is one way that they can explore how can I create a path forward for me as an individual while still.
Do you see how it's framed? How do I create a path forward for me as an individual? The whole point of marriage is two souls combining into one. Teamwork, working together. It's no longer my problems, it's our problems. If you're going into a marriage, creating a path forward for yourself, not for your family, for us together, your marriage is already going to fail. You're going to be in one of the divorce statistics. This is what they don't understand. The entire concept of marriage is turned on its head to these people. And by the way, if the conservative South has such horrendous numbers in the past 10 years or so, imagine what the liberal states numbers are. Imagine what's going to happen to marriage in the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Imagine the amount of single, husbandless, no child having women that's going to be in the future. They say 2040 is going to be half, but we may not be anticipating all the variables like the impact technology has on multiplying that by factors we have yet to see. So that number could jump up to 60, 70%. I mean, at this rate, with the amount of combativeness, adversarial attitude we have for one another, the vitriol, the hate for men, hate for women online, the misogyny, the misandry, we're at each other's throats without understanding that coming together, a man and a woman together, strong men and women creating nuclear families is the best chance for a happy, successful life you can look back on with pride and joy. It's your best chance of moving up in the social ladder. It's the best chance your children are going to have to succeed in this world. It's the best chance you're going to have for care later in life instead of being shipped off to some old folks' home. Your quality of life literally depends on this concept that has pushed Western culture and society to the top of the world. Civilization before you has succeeded with these concepts in place. Now we're undoing everything and we're surprised that it's starting to crumble again and we're going to enter a new dark age, or America, the empire, the hegemony is going to collapse and it's going to become something else, maybe isolationist, maybe the states split off in the future, maybe who the hell knows? Honestly, we have no idea. Things are happening today that we couldn't have imagined 20, 30 years ago. Who knows what the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years hold for us all, for this nation, for Western society and Western values. It's not looking good, not just for the West, but for the Far East. Also, a very efficient, family-oriented people that have succumbed to hedonism, materialism, status seeking, to the point where they're headed for a collapse. I mean, here's this article here that says Korea to launch population ministry to address low birth rates and aging population. Yeah, why don't you go look at your giant multinational corporations that control like half of your whole GDP? There's like 4 countries that control practically everything. It's profits over people, baby. It's profits over population and the will of its people. I mean, what don't they understand about this? You're working them to death. You're creating slaves. Korea will launch a new Ministry of Population strategy to address low birth rates and rapidly aging population, which have emerged as some of the starkest challenges facing the country. And you know, it sucks because they're going to try to do potentially what Europe did, is import millions of migrants, which never works because they have no blood ties, no history to the country. They're there to just completely leech off of it. That's it. They will work, pay some taxes, mostly take in benefits. It doesn't matter what they do. If a war ever happens, it's time to bleed for your country. They have no ties. They'll leave. All the comments in those sections say the same thing. If war ever came to the UK, later, this isn't my country. They're just people for economic opportunity that the country provides. Unfortunately, these Western nations are giving too many handouts. These people aren't working their way through. Some are, but most are just taking advantage. That's the reality. The government unveiled a plan following high-level meetings with the ruling party. It says once established, the new ministry will focus on strategy and planning for demographic issues such as low birth rates, population aging, workforce, and immigration, serving as the control tower for these matters. So that's a big one you're going to see, is immigration, because that's the quickest option they have to replenish their dwindling numbers. But again, all your customs, your entire culture, everything will in time be erased. These people were raised under completely different customs, cultures, and norms. They will not abide by yours. They will not be, for example, Japan was having issues with the tourists and some of the immigrants it had imported because the Japanese are extremely clean people. They have probably the best manners in the world. taught from school children to clean up after themselves and maintain order and neatness. And obviously foreigners in that country don't pick up trash off the streets like the Japanese do, don't carry their trash with them and throw it away in their own bins like the Japanese do, are disorderly and engage in a ton of misconduct in public, causing them to get arrested, and shops to close business to foreigners. That's a thing that's been happening in Japan, amongst other little traditions and customs that they have, unspoken rules that importing immigrants will not be following because it's not their land. It's not how they were raised. A lot of these values were instilled in them as children, as Japanese children in school. And we know the number one problem above even all of this, within 1 or 2 generations, the imported immigrants will also take on the characteristics of the native population, which is collapsing birth rates, because this problem is an economic and civil one. Namely, corporations are destroying our civilizations. It says the ministry, once launched, plans to bolster public campaigns and promotions to address demographic challenges and conduct research and analysis on demographic data. The government predicted that the new ministry may go into operation about 3 months after the revision bill is passed. This is the reorganization plan, however, did not include the abolition of Ministry of Gender Equality and Family, despite the government's controversial stance to eliminate the ministry that focuses on women's rights. It's weird how the more women's rights and gender equality supremacy for one side tends to lead to population collapse. It just seems kind of wild, eh? And some of the comments here that will give you insight into what their problems are is young people generally want to start families, but lack time, space, energy, money. Changing this in South Korea would require a fundamental overhaul of how the entire society functions on a basic level. A significant portion of young people also just don't want to have kids. And those who do want kids don't want them at nearly high enough rate to reach a replenishment rate despite that. I mean, look at how sad this generation is. Well, I'm 25 now. Getting looked after by autonomous robots doesn't seem like that much of a stretch in 50 to 60 years, barring some catastrophic unforeseen events that chokeholds our progress. My backup plan is just to stay healthy and self-sufficient for as long as I can and then off myself when I can't afford to live anymore. What? And that's responding to a comment that says, won't help all of today's childless worker drones who will find themselves with zero support in their later years, though. Someone else said, man, they're really going to do everything besides addressing their work culture, aren't they? We would rather make sex state mandated than give worker rights. If we work real hard at the problem, I'm sure we will solve it. Maybe they should increase the work week. They need to launch the Ministry of Reasonable Working Hours, aka let's ignore the obvious problems and try to find ways to force them to reproduce. Yep, we're all headed there. It's not just them. Importing people isn't going to fix the problem. Fix the culture first. Fix the way we see one another, men and women. Wrestle the power out of the corporate hands. Take money out of politics. Allow the people control over their own lives. Protect them from mega corporations who are stealing their ability to have families and children, aka Blackstone, buying up most of the properties in the US and then renting them out to you at higher prices. Family homes, by the way. So corporations are literally competing with you and taking from your pie and leaving you the crumbs. And then they wonder why their profit-driven goals have somehow collapsed the society around them. It's like the snake eating its own tail. They chase profits so hard at one point there will be no more money because it's concentrated too high up. Only too few people have enough to really spend. The rest are just going to be living paycheck to paycheck. You will own nothing and you will be happy. Here is a bug sandwich. Now back into your cubicle, Ted. Sheesh. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. We'll see you on the next one.